Hi team, this is Avenger and Voting here to present Sprint 3 report. What we completed this sprint was 50 points worth of work, and it can be broken down into a couple of categories. One, Event Sync is now upserting elections into MongoDB. Two, Query Service, our backend component, along with our client component, the front end, is now been integrated to fetch elections and register users and log in users. And we also have some stories for containerization, event sync query service, along with observability stories. Now, in this slide, what we're trying to highlight is that we initially estimated 22 points of work for this sprint, but we ended up with 50 points worth of work. And the change can be broken down here and into a few elements. One, we included some stories from Sprint 4, and this is to do mostly with user registration, user login. We were expecting that to be in Sprint 4. We moved it into Sprint 3. We added some observability stories from the backlog, and then some of the containerization stories. There was a new epic that was created and put into place into Sprint 4, but we initially put in Sprint 3. So then you can see here that it was added and then removed and then sized during the sprint, but it's going to be worked on Sprint 4. And we also found a bug to do with the way consumers are committing their progress before shutting down the application, and that has been fixed. Here's our burn down chart. You can see it starts at 22, increases to 50, and then slowly goes down to 0. And for our Sprint 4, what we're going to be working on this next sprint, we're estimating about 36 points worth of work, and this is going to be broken down into a few epics. One, user election. Give me elections that I've created, me the user. This is to do with query service and client. Other updates is observability with client and containerizing client, the component. And then we also had this new epic election TTL. All stories have to do with updating an election from open to closed, and then having the components react to that closed election now. For instance, not allowing users to vote on an election that's been closed, or even representing the election results differently when the election is closed versus when it's still up and running and available for votes. And that's what we're going to be working on this next sprint, and some client front-end view updates. We ended our sprint and we had our retrospective. What we agreed that we should start doing is, for PRs that have multiple commits, we should squash these commits into one and then merge that PR into develop. We agree that it's just easier on the eyes, easier on the brain, and good for auditability in the future. It's easier to look at one commit with all the changes from a feature branch, as opposed to having to traverse through some commits from a feature branch that may or may not have been overwritten by a sibling commit. So we agreed to do that, start doing that, and we agreed we should start deleting branches from the remote repository after we've merged and closed that PR. There's no reason to keep it around. You don't want to be syncing it or continuously having to sync it with develop. And if there's a new feature, we create a new feature branch, and if there was a bug that was brought in, let's create a hotfix branch instead. So we'll start doing that, and we'll stop merging multi-commit PRs into develop, and we also want to stop taking a story in Jira that has not been started and then putting it directly into done instead of letting it sit in the middle. We believe that this is affecting the way our analysis or Jira reports are the output. It's having something. It might be. It looks like it's messing it up, or having at least hard to understand the jump of, like in the burn down chart, for instance, over here. And what we'll continue doing: sync calls, code review, trade-off discussions for potential new features, updating master branch at the end of the sprint, and then not being reliant on randomly generated test data. For observability, how do we know if our infrastructure and our components are up and running and performant? We're using a few technologies. One, Prometheus, to scrape and store these metrics from our instances, infra, and components. Grafana to visualize these metrics in dashboards using dashboards and widgets. And then our infrastructure and components just have to run the Prometheus agent on and just configure it a bit on application startup. We're using this out-of-the-box metric called up, and so long, if Prometheus considers this target instance up if it's able to successfully return a response at a scheduled interval. And, so long as there's no connectivity issues or the application hasn't shut down or the application hasn't restarted, it'll be 1. Otherwise, it'll be 0, and that'll indicate to us that something's up with the system. And this is it for this video, but in the next video, we'll be demonstrating the progress that we've made in Sprint 3. Thank you very much.